So without further ado, a 4-minute opening statement from the presidential candidate, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm GUSA. Can you hear me? It's a little tall for me. Great. And I'm running for GUSA president along with the amazing guy standing right next to me. So I'm from Dubai, so I'm used to sand, not snow. And a few things about me. I've served as chair of Interfaith and Service with the Muslim Student Association, and I found a family on campus in my acapella group, the Georgetown Band. I was lucky to find them the second week of my freshman year. I absolutely love to sing and have grown up looking up to Beyonce, Houston, Mariah Carey, all the divas, Adele, I was up a few years ago. And also, real quick plug, come to Cabaret on Thursday. This Thursday, I'm singing Beyonce and Adele, just throwing it out there. And I'm going to get my voice back by then. So I got involved in GUSA my freshman year. I came to campus initially wanting to focus just on school and singing. And then I went to Leo's and things changed. I'm someone who likes finding solutions to the things that dissatisfy me. And as a Muslim student, my big thing was introducing halal and kosher options around campus because there were none. So essentially, there really wasn't much for me to eat. As I developed anemia, I couldn't really eat, and that was problematic. So I was told from the MSA board at the time that several MSAs before me had tried to bring halal and kosher to campus for almost 10 years, and nothing happened. So I realized that potentially GUSA could be an avenue to actually make something happen. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm a foodie. I went to Chipotle every day for 3 months in a row my freshman year. So it's no surprise that I focused on dining for a good portion of my time here. So my freshman year in the Senate, I was petrified to speak. I felt unempowered. I felt as though there was no guidance, and I felt as though I just had no place. And my sophomore year, I was able to chair the Student Life Committee and really focus on empowering the members of the committee, especially the freshmen, and to really see to it that they worked on the issues that they cared about. So we accomplished a ton of things, from Arts Week to the inaugural Georgetown Day Cup. We initiated the Let's Not Get Screwed Again campaign for the 2010 campus plan. We also organized the Boy Report meal exchange program. But overall, I recognize that the Senate as a whole was still not fully representative of our student body, which is why I took the speaker role this year, and I was very focused on translating what we did in the Student Life Committee to the Senate overall. And coming into this year, I realized what I noticed my freshman year when I decided to run for the Senate. The issues that we focus on this campus depend on who's in GUSA, so what GUSA focuses on depends on who GUSA is, and who's in the room. GUSA, as it is right now, does not represent the entire student body, which is why I focused on organizing a GUSA that looks like Georgetown earlier this year, along with Black House and groups including G Pride, GUSA, ISA, South Asian Society, which was a workshop aimed to encourage underrepresented communities to run for the Senate and to bring to the table issues that GUSA has failed to focus on. When Chris and I decided to run, we made our decision with the understanding that GUSA continues to fail in bringing underrepresented communities to the table. In addition, GUSA's reputation as an insular and elitist organization comes from its failure to truly bring students to the table. Our restructured proposal is rooted in our mission to reestablish GUSA as a student advocacy group that actually physically brings more students to the table and creates a student government that not only engages our student body, but empowers more students to drive conversations on this campus. I look forward to talking more with you all tonight about the issues we're facing on this campus today. Thank you.
Getting into college from Miami, Florida. Long walks on the beach are my passion. Smooth jazz, Cuban coffee, Aretha Franklin, and that about encompasses all of it. So I've spent most of my time at Georgetown getting involved in a variety of ways. I started my freshman year by joining Blue and Gray. I thought that it was really important that prospective families and students knew that you could be here on scholarship. You didn't necessarily have to fit the complete Jack and Jane Hoya model to being a Georgetown student. Then later I decided to get more involved in Blue and Gray on their student board to be sure that the actual organization was more representative of the entirety of Georgetown and not just the stereotypical tour guides that kind of went through the main recruiting process before. I also got involved in GUSA freshman year, and the bulk of my involvement there has been advocating for unrecognized student groups. Even though the administration doesn't recognize them, we as students recognize groups like Greek Life and Waiters for Choice and things like that. And I think it's important that GUSA plays a role in making sure that they have access to benefits like reserving space and stuff like that. So I also, as a GSP student, got very active in the GSP community. I figured it was probably a good idea to give back to an organization that was paying for me to be here in the first place. So I've been on the board for the past year. I've helped in a variety of ways to make campus a bit more inclusive for students of low income and or first gen backgrounds. One of those main roles has been launching the hashtag GSProud campaign this year, which is a celebration, an appreciation campaign for the GSP community here on campus. And last but not least, I decided to legitimize my Aretha Franklin singing in the shower by auditioning for a cappella sophomore year. And I got into saxophones. The Phantoms rejected me. There's that. She was unfortunately subject to my audition. There's that. Of all of that, the most rewarding experiences for me on campus have been in trying to understand and appreciate my peers. We have students on this campus from a wide array of backgrounds and perspectives and contexts, and the process of trying to understand them and appreciate them has been extraordinary. To understand why they believe certain things or don't believe others, and why I agree or disagree, has led me to both have a better understanding of myself and the person I want to strive to be, and a better understanding of the world and of campus around us. And that's exactly why I'm running for GUSA with Anushe. I think we both have a shared appreciation for the perspectives and the variety of perspectives that are on this campus, and the importance that they all should have in the role of GUSA as an advocacy body. I think that both myself and Anushe come from communities that don't necessarily find themselves represented very well in the GUSA conversations, and are putting stress on issues such as like socioeconomic inclusivity and restructuring GUSA are concrete ways to make sure that GUSA is both more efficient and inclusive, and to be sure that every person, no matter what their passion is, has a place at the table to drive policy. So we hope that over the course of this town hall / debate, that you have a better understanding for our issues and what we stand for, what we hope to accomplish next year. So thank you so much.
God, I wish I was from that.
Don't we all?
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, hi guys, thanks for being here. My first question is directed towards kind of your platform. It's very wide-ranging and detailed, but kind of your mission statement I think is very vague. You're talking about building barriers and breaking bridges, and that's like kind of just rhetoric. It doesn't really mean anything. So I want to know what within your platform you're going to prioritize and how you plan on actually doing it.
So if we were to summarize, for example, the 3 issues that would be really ultimately so this year, we're really going through negotiations for the next campus plan. So that would definitely be a priority area in terms of ensuring that student demands and priorities are put in there. So one big one would be, for example, ensuring that no new construction projects, housing projects are built until existing housing facilities are renovated. So that's the #1 push on that front. Other than that, something else that we're facing this year is the expiration of the Aramark contract. So the RFP proposal and the contract renegotiation process with the dining program on campus will also be a big priority because it's important that to ensure that the dining program that we have is reflective of what students actually want, how they, what their dining needs are. So those are 2
And one other one that I feel very passionate about is socioeconomic inclusivity on campus. I think that there are very concrete ways that student government can assist existing resources like GSP, CMEA, CSE, in their efforts to make sure that campus involvement has really no inequalities in terms of how much money you have in your pocket or whether or not your parents went to college or not. So I think there are very concrete ways in which we can expand upon later that kind of make that process a little more inclusive. If you'd like to, you can ask for it, I can explain those as well, but just for now, I think
is Hans Moyer, I'm deputy editor for La Jolla. And Chris, I want to go back to your theme of inclusivity that's been very prominent in your campaign. I want to focus a little bit of the conversation now on race and cultural inclusivity on campus. According to your platform, with regards to cultural race and inclusivity, you wrote, quote, institutional norms and the culture of Georgetown as a whole are not reflective of the student body it serves. So the question here is, what specific norms and culture would your proposed policy measures seek to address if you are elected as president and vice president?
Sure. So we're going to tag team this as well. But I think we can divide it into two sections. One, academic, and second, student life on campus. And I think it's fair to say that there are a wide array of organizations that have become kind of hallmark student experiences. Be it La Jolla, NSO, Blue and Gray, Corp, and not necessarily, the problem is they become hallmark Georgetown experiences, but not for everyone. And that's one of the main undertones to that point there. There are concrete ways for, be it socioeconomic inclusivity, racial or cultural inclusivity, that we can make the acceptance processes and the application processes for those organizations more like inclusive and a lot, more representative of the student body. I can get into that if you'd like. Some include changing the tire on certain applications and interviews. Not everyone has the money to buy a suit for every interview. Not everyone, when you have a board that's judging students on presentability, and if they come in jeans, Air Forces, and a baggy jersey, that may be perfectly comfortable and representative of who they are. So we have to be sure that people adjudicating them or interviewing them don't have biases about that. Also, student organizations, especially these big ones, should be taking inventory of what groups are underrepresented within their student organizations and have guest readers from those groups to be sure that their biases are checked in that application process. And we can just keep going on and on and on about concrete ways that process can be fixed. Alicia, do you want to chime in about the academic process?
Sure. Just to finish up with the student life portion, in addition to that, hub applications and whatnot, one thing we really want to propose is, again, two SOCA representatives from GUSA. I think that's important that conversation needs to happen. Right now, there's no link, so that's important. And another element, adding on to that in terms of race and cultural inclusion, is so for academics, we would say that a lot of students have really stressed that the linguistics department and the language programs we have here are not sometimes fully encompassing. So some South Asian students, for example, have really mentioned and strongly advocated for a Hindi language program. And they feel that the fact that that language as of now is not offered is in some way reflective of the place that they have on this campus. So that's sort of adding on to the educational element.
Does that answer your question?
Oh, sorry, one more thing, sorry, with student life is, for example, I was speaking to the president of Jewel and the Leadership the other day, and they mentioned that they're sort of really trying to focus on seeing a more diverse group and reaching out to different communities because they've noticed that, the communities or students that are typically in school could definitely be reached out to, beyond just what they currently are. So one thing we discussed is really working with CMEA and SOCA in terms of bringing together a certain list of guidelines that clubs can take, certain action they can take, and we can always serve as a link between these groups and sort of different communities here on campus.
Okay, Frank from Tech. Concentrate variety. For example, with our new soft drink, Honey Head. Honey Head. If you are willing to endorse Honey Head right now, we see it as a positive step towards achieving our goal.
Yeah, you can try it.
We actually have a script prepared. If you guys want to see it,
If I don't like it, I'm not going to endorse it.
Is there honey in honey?
there's not legally honey in honey. Hold on, wait.
Is this an alcohol?
No, it's not. You just opened it.
Yeah. Hey, hold on. Let me do this right. No, you can read out the script.
There's nothing I like more on a hot, sweaty day like today than to kick off my shoes and enjoy a cool, fun camp. Unfair. Perhaps. It's a monster.
Thank you, Heckler. Moving on to questions from the voice. All right. Well, I'd like to kind of follow up on your answer that you gave to the Hoya about, you kind of talked about how you wanted to make the Hallmark Georgetown experiences more accessible. But I think a lot of students are actually kind of concerned that the Hallmark Georgetown experience is one that's fraught with mental health problems, with depression, with feeling just like unwanted in those kind of groups. And a lot of students think of the solution as kind of rather than making the already elevated groups more inclusive, trying to elevate all the other organizations. As the representative from the boys, a little short boy that you didn't invoke our name when you were talking about Hallmark Georgetown experiences. But how does your platform seek to address that concern that's been talked about a lot?
I think, so by saying what I said, I meant that if they so choose to take part in those things, they should have more inclusive processes through the means that I already mentioned. I think that it's perfectly fine, and I think it's probably preferable that they explore other avenues because this campus is not homogenous as you need to be. And in saying that we want to address those inclusivity issues for those Hallmark experiences, it just means that if someone wants to join those, or if someone wants to take part in those kind of things, that they're inclusive and represented in the student body, and are as unbiased as we can possibly make them. That's all I need.
All right, thank you. Representative from La Jolla.
So to continue on the trend of inclusivity, as always, is our Heritage Year campaign. We talked a little bit earlier, both of you, and Nisha, I want to address this to you. We talked a little bit about the relationship in unrecognized groups on campus, instead of finally having a voice heard through your platform. So I must ask you to finally forward a little bit of GUSA, the future GUSA executives' relationship with unrecognized groups on campus, ranging from Boys First Choice, GU Fossil Free, Center Range of Greek Life, including PI. How will the Con and this ticket, address the needs of such groups?
Right. So a big part of unrecognized groups, right, is non-access to benefits. So in terms of what we would like to address is how can GUSA sort of aid in terms of getting access to those benefits. So for example, these groups don't receive any portion of the student activities fee. So in terms of printing, how can we coordinate that? How can we coordinate room reservations? How can we sort of help them out with the things that they don't have access to? So whether that be through co-sponsorship, we've also proposed increasing the size of the GUSA fund because that will allow them to apply for funding and to be able to program. I can touch on Greek Life as well, if that's something you would like. Yeah, sure. So we've had quite a few representatives from the different Greek organizations engage in conversation in terms of what they feel GUSA can aid with. So one thing we've discussed is, we can aid in the establishment or the coordination of a Greek council. Because especially with the email that went out earlier this year from Student Affairs, in terms of really just putting down Greek life and saying that it has no central place on this campus and that they highly discourage it. We've mentioned, that a big portion of our campus, a big portion of our students are involved in Greek life, and while the university doesn't recognize it, we as students should recognize that it exists and is a big part of our social atmosphere. So, for example, how we respond to that email is sending one out on GUS's behalf, stating that Greek life exists and it is something that we recognize and support. And in terms of the Greek Council, a big portion of that is really because there is no organized Greek Council that exists, just strictly because Greek organizations aren't recognized. Having a place for the different organizations to coordinate amongst each other and sort of accept or agree upon certain principles that they would like to share, in terms of commitment to service and whatnot.
This has also been part of my job in the exec for the past year. Myself and Caladina, who's phenomenal, our secretary for organized student groups. And there are concrete ways that GUSA can just help. Student groups like Boys for Choice and Greek Life and all that, they don't have access to benefits like initially said, which means they can't reserve space. GUSA cannot, per the rules, front that process and say, oh, we're going to reserve it for you to have your event, but GUSA can, according to the rules, co-sponsor. And I guarantee you that if SIGAP is having a 5K, to promote, awareness about sexual assault and stuff like that, GUSA should be co-sponsoring them differently. And that means reserving space and having volunteers and collaborating, then we should be doing that. And the same goes for class.
Excellent. Let's learn from the heckler. Can we ask for a question this round and then maybe come back around? Okay, if there's time for the next question. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the role of GUSA as an advocacy body versus like the role of GUSA as a student government body. Because one of the things that was a big issue last year, and probably the reason that we have the current executive that we do, is that students felt like they couldn't really actually engage with GUSA, and that GUSA wasn't really representing their interests. And they were having trouble feeling like GUSA was communicating to them in the way that actually brought them in. And one of the ways that Joe Luther kind of wrote it, tried to combat that is by incorporating humor. Craig is our minister of fun on the campus. But that doesn't really honestly seem to have worked very well. As much as I enjoy seeing a funny YouTube video on the occasional GUSA newsletter, it doesn't really make me any more likely to read the body of the rest of the video. So given that students are so, even efforts like that are not working to try to bridge the gap between you and your constituents, what do you want to do to address that?
That's basically why we've proposed the restructuring plan that we have. This is my 3rd year in GUSA, and that's probably the biggest frustration, being able to really communicate with students what's going on. And we've realized that a big part of that is because the student body doesn't really have a way to engage in those issues. GUSA has traditionally kind of sort of, spat out information that this is stuff that we've worked on, as opposed to saying, these are the issues, let's sort of bring you to the table. And that's essentially what our restructuring model is doing. Within GUSA itself, because you have an executive working separately from the Senate, working on the same issues, but separately, what ends up happening is you have a frustrated administration, and you see ineffectiveness. And what I've learned from the Senate, especially with our subcommittee structure, is that when you have subcommittees or a way for students to be able to get involved with the process, sit at the table, drive those conversations, literally bring up what they would like to see, that's when you get students engaged. While I've been meeting different freshmen, Chris and I, sometimes I ask, freshmen who aren't aware, do you know what GUSA is? And sometimes they say they've seen it. A big part of that is because a lot of their friends are involved in these subcommittees. And it's a way for them to actually drive those changes as opposed to sort of that top-bottom approach that GUSA has traditionally been going with the current structure. That's what it allows for, where you have a GUSA that sort of dictates what will be happening and what issues they're going to focus on without necessarily having that element of consultation with the students or having that seat at the table for students to also bring those issues to the table. So that's a big part of our restructuring in terms of how can we have it so that we don't just have one expert in each issue area, but rather there are multiple students on this campus who are very strongly advocating for specific issues or are just genuinely interested as well. So how do you bring students into those conversations?
Just to add that, the structure doesn't work, right? The exec is limited to one secretary for diversity affairs, or an undersecretary as well, one secretary for academic affairs, and excuse my language, but who the hell are we to say that person is the most qualified person for the job? There are a large amount of students who are passionate about those issues, and I think that opening it up to a team-based approach, to have anyone who's passionate about them that wants to contribute to the conversation, is the best way to do it. Joe and Connor did an excellent job of trying that out at the beginning of the year, and it worked for a while. I think seniors kind of got a little senioritis toward the end. But that's kind of the strategy that we're going with. GUSA's role is not to monopolize other people's issues. It should be advocating so that the people who are most passionate and most knowledgeable about those issues are getting the most attention possible and are driving policy. We do not know it all, we're just two people. So if there's someone in this room that knows about an issue better than we do, you can better believe that they're going to be the ones we're going to try to bring in the room when it matters. So.
And also I wanted to say that we definitely looked at, so students in the Senate, we also looked at something that really worked well with Joe and Connor with their last year of Diversity Action Committee. They focused on getting the diversity requirement passed. And you saw that the student body was well aware of what was going on, because that was beyond one person. They had a full team working on that. And that was a model that sort of inspired, how can we get people engaged more, get them interested? And we realized a big part of it is let them have a seat at the table, make that an option.
Great. Hi, yeah, I have this one is specifically for Anusha. Hi, how are you?
Thank you.
How are you?
Well,
Thank you. You mind if I record this?
sure.
This is something else as we see as a positive step towards our endorsement.
Great.
Okay. Many observers have noted your decision to take an internship full-time with Goldman Sachs this summer, rather than take up living in the summer here full-time, despite the upcoming negotiation for a 20-year campus plan. In order to prove that you are indeed committed to negotiating the campus plan without being thrown by the promise of money, can you please express your commitment while staring me in the eye and without getting distracted by this $5 bill? Can you please express your commitment to me while I wave this money in your face?
I firmly express my commitment to you. I haven't planned
To do what? What are you committed to?
To this role. I am committing to this role without getting distracted by the $5 bill.
Do you understand that the $5 bill is symbolic of
Absolutely.
the cost of money?
Absolutely.
And not necessarily just the money that I'm holding right now. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Heckler. You're welcome. Moving on to the voice.
I think it's fair enough to say since it's okay.
Well, to return to reality.
So, for example, the dining, the RFP proposals, I'm on that committee now, and it's important. So March 3rd is when we're looking at finalizing that RFP. So my top priority is ensuring that we have a firm understanding of what students want and ensure that students are engaged in this process and that we fight for the best possible contract that not only provides the best dining program on this campus, but also a contract that respects workers' rights. Because as of now, we've seen that with Aramark, we're facing some major issues despite the fact that the university has a just employment policy that is not being fully followed in certain cases. So our big thing is focusing on that, ensuring we get the best dining program because this is time sensitive. Other than that, again, the campus plan, as the first draft will most likely be completed in April. Our big thing is pushing for those priorities and demands, making sure that they get in there.
Yeah, and just to tack on the third of those priorities, issue areas for socioeconomics. There are some that can wait till the summer or wait later on, but some like graduation costs and costs of staying in BCW for parents and families for those couple days of graduation. Those can be addressed right now, starting the book drives, the campus-wide book drives on the platform. Also the cap and gown clauses and all that stuff. If you look at the platform, there's some pretty obvious ones that should be tackled now.
One more question from each of you. That will be moving to the other portion.
Okay.
If you guys could limit your responses to 2 sentences.
So I'd like to kind of go back to your restructuring of GUSA. I'd like to, I want you to kind of critique the work of Joe and Connor of this last administration. I want you to tell me what you think they did well, what you think they did poorly, and what you think improved.
I think Joe O'Connor did a great job of bringing different people to the table versus traditional GUSA executives are comprised of people who work on a certain campaign that entering in and serving those cabinet positions. They did a great job of bringing in a diverse range of perspectives. And in terms of something I would critique, I'd say I think Joe O'Connor came in really with the emphasis to engage the student body. I wish I saw a little bit more of that humor element. In terms of videos and whatnot, I think that they could have done more of that with communications.
For the sake of time, sexual assault, mental health, campus plan, excellent job. Bringing work to the table, amazing. I think they missed out on an opportunity that they were uniquely positioned to do, which is to be very funny, engage the student body.
It's a very fair assessment, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Luther.
I want to turn to student safety and sexual assault on campus. In your platform, you highlighted the one priority of your campaign would be the replacement of current Assistant Vice President of Student Health, James C. Welch. And then you also stated how, quote, general apathy and lack of awareness amongst the student body enables the university to not make the issue of sexual assault misconduct as big of a priority. So what qualities is your campaign looking for in an administrative leader to tackle student health, and what will your policies be to address the apathy and awareness of issues such as sexual assault?
So Dr. Welsh is leaving, so a big priority is ensuring that students be a part of the process of selecting his replacement. And in terms of how the university deals with sexual assault, a big thing is, so Olivia Heinerfeld has really been driving conversations, past summer with that MOU, and there's still certain elements that have not been signed, so a big push is to see that be signed. They've done it, so for the university, it's been great with the campus climate survey, that is a priority. But again, continuing those conversations, getting the rest of that MOU signed is a big priority.
Yeah, so that, and then the second was the sexual assault part, and just the overarching student health part. I think something really important to explore is the fact that Georgetown, like other universities, needs to step up when students are on Medicaid. So when students move here, they have to apply for Medicaid here in DC and stuff like that. And the process is kind of long, and they expect you to have health insurance right away. And Georgetown should at least step up for that first section there, or step up in general if students are below a certain income level to support them in terms of health insurance on campus. So I think someone who's sympathetic to that cause would be great as well.
All right, and last, most definitely least.
What was that?
What?
Hi, yeah, this is just a quick follow-up to what's been said already. There's been a lot of talk of inclusivity, in the executive and in what you're going to do for the program to roll out. I like all the talk of that, but how will I, as a straight white male from the Northeast United States, feel well represented on this campus under your administration?
How will you feel represented?
Yeah.
Do you not feel represented?
There's like a lot of us, but
So is it an issue?
what's that?
So is it an issue still?
I don't know how to feel it anyway.
Well,
You're allowed to tell me it's a non-issue.
It should be noted that white men from the Northeast are minority in the state legislature.
Thank you. See, I'm a minority.
So it says I am a brown man from the Northeast.
Well, I mean, I'm not from the Northeast, I'm actually not from America. But
I don't understand that.
But I think, we should grab coffees and talk about it. And I think that would be inclusive. I think face contact is always great.
Thank you.
I'm doing whatever. Instead of doing it over coffee, I think it's something I can do better.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we will now be moving. Does this thing even work? I don't know.
Yeah.
Sort of. So we will now be moving to the audience portion of the town hall. If you have any questions, please submit them via our Twitter or come up here to the dais and just tell us your question. It's pretty casual. So off the bat, we've received questions regarding the freshman executive committee and what's your plans for those.
So in terms of freshman executive committee, so currently how freshmen are sort of incorporated into the executive is they sit on their own separate committee. We will not be including FEC in our administration, but rather we will include freshmen on each policy team. We want a minimum of one freshman on each team because it's important, especially since we've been speaking to freshmen, that rather than freshmen sort of just be left to sort of, work on programming exclusively, they also be driving policy changes. So we're going to ensure seats at the table for freshmen.
Yeah, so, and just to add on to that, the way it's currently structured, it seems as though, at least from my perspective, that FEC is kind of like the kiddie table at the GUSA table, at the GUSA scene. So I think that freshmen should, as Lucia said, have a role from day one in driving policy, being part of the process, instead of being pushed aside and kind of communicating back and forth between the executive and themselves.
And especially for the sake of institutional knowledge and continuity, it's important that freshmen be a part of those conversations consistently, because the biggest problem with GUSA is that you have your advocates graduating, and then the administration takes advantage of that, because then you have to restart that conversation, start from scratch, and nothing gets done. So in terms of what's a Hoya, and we've had this conversation with Joe and Connor, a big thing that, I've spoken to G. Brewer about this too, is we would like to see what's a Hoya really be a bit more informative. We would like to see, for example, potential SAFE training or RHF training, and see something that our student body needs to be a part of that. So rather than freshmen kind of sort of hearing sometimes superfluous information, that they come out with something substantial.
Okay, there's actually going to be a referendum item on this coming ballot concerning live registration versus pre-registration, and the student body's opinions as to where the universities go with that. What are your opinions as candidates, and what do you think the policy should be going forward?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy that we approved that with the Senate. That was something we really wanted to push for. It's very important that we gauge, particularly because Banner 9 basically already includes live registration. So is it worth spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to outsource and also incorporate pre-registration? Personally, I'm in favor of pre-registration. That's what I'll be voting for. But in terms of what we will push for as an administration, depends on how the student body votes, whether or not we should dedicate all those resources to pre-registration.
I maybe a little more elementary response to it. If we don't have a good time, using Wi-Fi already, can you imagine if everyone's logging on at once to register for classes? So that's kind of my take on it. So I prefer pre-reg for that reason.
Okay, so another question we've received via the Twitter has to do with initiated internship over the summer. And specifically, have you considered flipping the ticket? Given that, mentioned specifically why punish Chris and Alex with 3 a.m. phone calls and risk not getting a return after at Goldman commuting your Saturday. So flipping the ticket, is that something you guys have envisioned?
Consider it, yes.
Definitely considered it. Also, I want to clarify, in terms of 3 a.m., I spoke to a previous intern who was in this division last summer. 3 a.m. won't be a thing. I'll be out by 10 p.m., thankfully. The anomaly was used there until 1 a.m. once, so that's good. I was worried about the 3 a.m. phone calls, but don't worry, Alex, I won't do that to you. But yes, we've considered flipping the ticket, but ultimately, Chris, before I made any decisions, we consulted. I spoke to Chris firstly, I spoke to our team, past executives, current, our core staff members. That was very important.
Yeah. So first of all, the question said that it's a punishment. It's not a punishment because I'm signing up for this. I'm signing up for this to be a partnership, right? So I think it's really a misconception to think that the GUSA exec is one person. You're electing 2 people because they try to encompass, things that you identify with or hope is represented in the student body. And you're also electing 2 people that are going to assemble a team that you hope is represented in the student body. So to think that one person being away for a few weeks is, detrimental and is going to destroy the team is kind of not necessarily logical in my opinion.
What do you see as the future of GSB?
Sure. So I think they deserve their own space because I think the basement of Healy is getting a little too small. I think that the main problem with GSB is that its support stops at a certain income level. And if we had more funds from donors or just from endowment or whatever to play with in terms of covering more students, because that would be, I think, the future. GSB's main goal in achieving is to cover more students, the most amount of students as possible. So right now it stops at a certain, income level, and really, if you're beneath a certain number, you get, demonstrated need. But if you're middle class, on paper it shows that you can afford to be here, but the realities of the economy, the realities of your family situations, says something different. And universities with larger endowments and that place more importance on scholarship or having more funds to, it means to put more money into scholarships. have already addressed that issue. And I think the future of GSP is striving into that direction.
Okay, so a lot has occurred since fall 2014, specifically regarding free speech on campus. What do you think, and regarding the various Boys for Choice protests and incidents there, what do you think still needs to be done? And do you think the issue has been solved just because we haven't been hearing about it as much this semester?
So one big thing with free speech is, so as a university, our free speech policies are actually pretty good. It's a matter of implementation. That's where we fail. And that really revolves around oftentimes GP officers not being adequately trained to deal with these free speech issues, which is a big part of it. And one thing our administration would really like to accomplish is working with Chief Cooper to ensure that officers are well aware of the free speech policies here on campus and so that they are applied applicably, fairly. Beyond that, also with the SAO, we currently have the Office of the Free Speech Advocate. But rather, we would like to see that be under the jurisdiction of SAO as a whole, that free speech issues be covered by SAO as a whole, rather than just one person specialized in that matter. And that we also have a team focused on free speech advocacy within our executive.
Excluding students from the beginning. And I think that, yes, there are many pros to consolidating, mail. You have more space in the RHOs and all that, and you have more possibilities for, snack shops or whatever students want in those spaces. But the reality is you're losing jobs. And they know that if the RHO is going to be performing just lockouts and another function, then you're going to know how many people it takes to operate that RHO, which means you probably know how many people you're going to fire. And my opinion on it is lots of students, especially GSB students, have work-study on campus, and that encompasses it. And without a concrete idea of how many jobs are going to be lost, we shouldn't support it. And without a concrete idea or proposal for where those jobs should be made up in another place on campus, we shouldn't support it. So.
And also this raises issues with accessibility. With students that would have to travel more to pick up a package, will there be accommodations for these students in terms of potential delivery? So one new development is that actually the money for one SNAP officer will essentially be now reallocated to what Conroe calls SNAPton, so a SNAP's captain. And in terms of how we do that, so SNAP, for example, is a result of the last campus plan. So in terms of this next campus plan, and this also brings up issues with RDs and reimbursable details, where we have university resources really used essentially to really hinder off-campus life. And that is something that we will obviously be pushing to address in the next campus plan. And particularly with the upcoming DC policing bill that will expand jurisdiction of GPD, that is something that we're going to work on shutting down or amending the portion of SBOs on campus, so campus special police officers.
Okay, final question. What do you think is the most significant issue so far on the campus facing that we have not touched on? The most significant issue we haven't discussed today? We'll move to closing statements.
There's a lot. I mean, we have around 22 teams that we're potentially looking to propose. But I think something that is very dear to myself and Chris as well is arts advocacy. That's something that really, really got me interested in the Senate. And the first year of my Senate in the Senate for me was we had Andrew Walker, who chaired the subcommittee on creative arts and expression, and Arts Week was for the first time hosted. But with facilities in regards to arts and also actually athletics, that's another important issue we didn't talk about. So just facilities, really. But with arts facilities, you really don't have an advocacy group for the arts. PAC, which is the Performing Arts Advisory Board, essentially is a funding board. So what ends up happening is you don't have actual advocacy. And again, especially with how our arts community is sort of divided with academic programs, performing arts programs, visual arts, we don't really have adequate facilities. So that's a big thing. Those conversations have not been brought to the campus plan or master planning per se, and that's a conversation that needs to happen.
I want to say that I feel so passionately about the fact that GUSA should be taking a stronger role to make campus a more inclusive place, regardless of how much money you have in your pocket or whether or not your parents went to college. So I'm going to say that. And then also, I also feel very passionately and very confident in the plan that we devised to make GUSA more efficient and representative of the student body. So with that said, I hope that we've been able to clear up all of your kind of questions and kind of loopholes that you may have seen within our platform. And I invite any other conversation on the side afterwards to further discuss that.
So year after year, we see tickets really proposing reform of GUSA, and that's always the primary vision that we see brought to the stage year after year. And Chris and I discussed this when we first sat down, and we realized saying you want things to change is one thing, but actually proposing the way to do it is another, and that's how our restructuring plans came about. This was something that was done collaboratively with the Senate and the executive, or Chris being in the executive meeting in the Senate. We have senators working on this with us. It's important to recognize that GUSA, even within itself, has typically, its inefficiency has really been driven by the fact that we have two separate bodies not working collaboratively. And that has often created a toxic environment within GUSA, and beyond that, GUSA obviously has failed to engage the student body in a meaningful way. And all of that has contributed to what we want to restructure GUSA to be. We want GUSA to be something that is collaborative. We want an advocacy body that gives students the right to be at the table, and students that care or are passionate about specific policy issue areas and have a way to do so. That's a big part of our overall restructuring overhaul. We are rewriting the bylaws. Essentially, the current system is not working. We're disappointed. The student body is disappointed. GUSA right now is failing our student body. We have students who either don't know what GUSA is or don't feel like GUSA is impacting their lives in a meaningful way. And that's important to recognize, and we do. And our big thing is to change that and to allow students to have a seat at the table to really drive these conversations. And a big thing in terms of inclusivity, and this is something I spoke to Robert Giselle about as well, in terms of our new team-based structure. GUSA is more than just one person, it is more than just two people. And GUSA is not president and vice president, it is the students that are working day in, day out, in making changes on this campus, and it is important that we recognize that. We have a student body that cares, and that we empower them to be able to work on the things that they care about. And as Chris said, we would love to keep talking to you, so we'll be staying here to continue the conversation. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, candidates. And that concludes the first portion of our town hall here tonight. If there are any representatives from any of the write-in campaigns that have submitted budgets, we encourage you to approach the stage at this time. It looks like we have the hot chicken madness ticket. Oh wow, okay.
I'm gonna be serving as their translator in this Q&A session, so direct all the questions at them, and I'll listen to what they have to say.
All right, just to go over rules again, I'll be turning it back over to the voice, La Jolla, and the heckler to ask questions of the writing candidates. If there are no other write-in tickets wanting to take the stage who submitted budgets by the appropriate deadline, it'll just be Chicken Madness and Hot Chick. Okay. All right, without further ado.
We've actually already had the chance to interview Hot Chick and Chicken Madness. You can find a transcription of that interview on our website, www.georgetownvoice.com. So we'd like just to see all our questions for this time.
We are going to engage with the candidates tonight and have a thorough discussion. Hot Chicken, Chicken Madness. And your name, sir, is the translator?
Anirudh Vidadi.
Anirudh Vidadi. And how do you spell that?
ANIRUD. HA?
Alright, well, if you may translate a question for the candidates. Chicken Madness Hot Chick, why'd you get into the race? Why didn't you launch a formal campaign by the associated deadline?
Can you clarify which sandwich?
This is chicken madness. Can't you tell?
Right now, all I see is an oats potato chips.
So we usually consider ourselves apolitical. We don't like to mix brand politics. But and it's been a long time, and I think finally we decided we had to step into this campaign and do something. You know, last election really showed the real separation between GUSA and the rest of the student population. And at the end of the day, it's what the student body president and vice president have to do is be someone who can represent the entire population and be inclusive and respect everyone regardless of what kind of sandwiches they want to have. So I think we really think that the hot chicken madness ticket best represent GUSA's interest, best represent the students' interest, and are really there to speak on behalf of everyone. They really listen to everyone, regardless of what kind of condiments they want in their sandwich, whether they want to be vegetarian or whether they want to be gluten-free. We include everyone, and that's really what our ticket's about. It's about inclusion and celebration of diversity.
Hi, yeah, ours is more of a comment. I'm sorry, what is your name?
Anuruddha?
Can you say it one more time?
Anuruddha?
Anuruddha, hi. Many students have approached the Georgetown heckler, asking us if we were behind our decision to run, or if we had any comments on it. Anuruddha, I have this to say to you. The rest of the heckler staff and I think that what you're doing is a gross abuse of our democratic process and the privilege that we, as students, have as a right to assembly. It is absolutely despicable to make light of a serious student body election as if it some sort of joke. We have no questions for you or any of your representatives, and we call for an immediate end to your campaign as soon as possible. So we may have a directed, focused conversation regarding real issues affecting your students. Thank you.
Chicken
See you
Madness.
tomorrow, Pisces? See you tomorrow, Pisces?
Heckler will not be obviously engaging at this time, but the Hoyle will continue to engage in a productive and formulative dialogue. I just have one question now for Chicken Madness and Hot Chick. Chris Anderson's campaign focuses mostly about hands-on inclusivity measures and policy reform. However, how can you two, Hot Chick and Chicken Madness, accomplish such hands-on policy reforms if you two do not have hands?
First off, Hot Chick is very offended that you call out her lack of hands as preventing her from being able to eat. That being said, it's not just about the representatives you select as your president and vice president. It's about who those people select, or sandwiches select, to help support them in their cabinet. And I think that, well, we think that as one of the most inclusive campaigns out there, we will pick the right candidate, get the right things done, and have the right hands for each of us.
Thank you. And this is a final question. How, if the Hot Chick and Chicken Madness campaign do end up winning the ticket for Georgetown, GUSA, president, vice president, how would they be able to enact actual change if the expiration date doesn't last over 2 weeks?
We think we can get a lot done in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. The Hoyle seats their time.
I was going to ask a question about student apathy, but I'm feeling kind of meh about that one now.
Oh, good one, Alden.
Voice is getting invited to the next debate. If we don't have further questions from the media board, and unless there's some from the audience, we're going to thank you guys for your time. And thank you, Hot Chicken and Chicken Madness.
They can make clothing statements.
If you have anything else to say at this point, we invite you to say so. Otherwise, thank you for your participation in the town hall.
I think they like to let their flavors speak for themselves, so they're not going to be making films.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes tonight's GUSA 2016 Town Hall. We thank you everyone for showing up. And don't forget to vote. The election is Thursday, February 18th. Thank you so much.